Good afternoon, colleagues, students, and HR family. Yesterday at Milpark Education, we celebrated HR International Day, and today we have the wonderful opportunity to explore HR horizons, navigating the future. During this session, our distinct speakers will unpack the transformative changes that we can anticipate in HR in the near future. First, very welcome Dr. Liiza Gie, an internationally renowned associated professor all the way from Vancouver, Canada, with her 20 years of experience in academia and HR. She has held significant roles at CPUT, heading up the HR department there, and now at the University of Canada West. Dr. G is also a chartered professional in HR, human resource management in British Columbia, and also master HR professional with South African Board of People Practices. Welcome, Dr. G. Also joining the session, we have Dr. Jivan, Head of Research and Quality Assurance at SABPP. He has co-authored the revised national standards, which is also now known as the National People Practices and Government Standards. With his extensive experience in human capital management, he has served on many boards, and we welcome you. He has a doctoral degree from Wits Business School and has numerous publications. Welcome, Dr. Jivan. And to
Thank
you
you.
who are joining, thank you for your attendance. We trust that you will find this valuable, this discussion. HR family, please join me in welcoming Dr. Liiza Gie and Dr. Jivan. So, first of all, I would love to ask Dr. Liiza, how do you envisage the role of HR evolving in the next decade?
Well, first of all, good morning, HR colleagues. It is a cold, rainy Vancouver. So I'm very happy to join you from Canada. It's like my heart is still halfway in South Africa, but the body and the mind is now officially in Canada. So, Dr. Grewe, Dr. Jivan, my HR colleagues, when I had to prepare for this interview, my mind got stuck on COVID 19. Yes, I know you're tired of hearing about COVID 19, but it fundamentally changed the way that we look at HR or the human resources of the organization. So let me start there because we can't look in the future if we haven't looked at the past and where we are now in the present. So, the most important fundamental thing that COVID 19 taught us was the way that we have been doing work is changing. In the past, we spoke about, oh, I want flexible work arrangements. I want to decide when I come to work and what time I leave, but I will be at work during a particular core hours. Now, with COVID 19, we have gone into the remote work. So, where we are working from home, we are working from our holiday resorts. So COVID 19 has fundamentally changed where and how we do our work. So now post COVID 19, we're talking about hybrid work. So hybrid work is where you come to campus or you come to your organization for a certain amount of days, may that be 2 days, 3 days, and then the rest of the week you're actually going to complete your work from home. But now, to make matters more complicated, they're talking about a 4 day work week. So now it's not about, oh, I'm going to work 1 day less. It's actually about leveraging and compressing your normal 5 day, may that be 40 hours or 45 hours a week, into 4 days. So HR will now have to determine, one, is there a space for you to continuously to work remotely? That is from home. When are you going to come to the office to ensure that there's a hybrid working environment? And then when and how are we going to implement this 4 day work week? Are you going to be at work from Monday to Thursday, or are you going to work from Tuesday to Friday? And that actually means that you're going to put in longer hours for the 4 days that you are going to work without being compensated for overtime. So in our South African labor legislation, we are going to have to refocus on how we define that complex work week and how we're going to get things done. And that is not going to be a quick fix that we're going to solve in 1 day or a month or even in 2024. It is going to be having a longer lens looking at the future. But now, so what about the role of HR? Where are we going into the future? The thing is, my colleagues, I don't actually know because the future is that thing. It's that VUCA world of volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, and a lot of complexity. So the only thing I can tell you about the future is HR needs to be future fit. So that means we need to have agile HR practices. First and foremost, you need to position where is the organization. So HR isn't a little sub function that we have on the organogram where people, if you have a problem, you run to HR to solve it. HR needs to be at the forefront with the organization. So that means being a strategic business partner, being a change agent in this constant changing world of work we are living in, and most importantly, being an employee steward. So being the employee champion and having that balance between the employer-employee relationship. So with that said, if HR wants to be future fit, you need to first understand where is the business going? What is the business strategy? And you know, strategy is not about 5 or 10 years into the future. Strategy now is about 1, 3, maximum 5 years. So you need to sit with the board of directors and craft out what is this new ecosystem of work and the ecosystem of the organization. Now, that can be a little bit complicated. So, let's also be honest. There's an elephant in the room, and that elephant is this thing that you and I are communicating on. It is the artificial intelligence, the technological devices, the clouds, the Bluetooth, the WhatsApp, so all these wonderful technological mechanisms that make us communicate across the world and across different platforms. So, this also means that even though we refer to ourselves as human resource practitioners, we are changing the way we see humans and we see workers. So, part of this ecosystem, most importantly, is to accept for now, forever, we are going to have a digital worker. So, who is the digital worker? It's not who, it's a it. What is it? And it is the generative artificial intelligence. I'm not talking about Chat GPT at this particular point or Grammarly and all these other wonderful chat bots. I'm talking about how this generative artificial intelligence is going to show up in the workplace. So HR will need to determine in the future role how are the human workers and the digital workers, this artificial intelligence, going to come together to support the organizational business strategy. But this also means we are going to have to craft a new organizational culture that embraces how we do things. So, this diverse workforce we talk about includes the humans and a diverse range of humans across global trends, global markets, global borders with the digital workers. And then we're going to have to craft new norms, new traditions, new ways of doing things that's going to excite the human worker to want to come to work, to embrace the artificial intelligence, digital worker, and to come together into what we call as an agile HR future fit strategy. And the only thing I can say to you at this point, Dr. Grewe, is it's not about what the role of HR is going to be. The question is HR ready to let go of the past, let go of all the theories and practices that we thought we knew, and embrace a new way of doing things, a new way of looking at the world through a lens of possibilities and not through a lens of, oh, I can't do this. Oh, it has not worked in the last 20 years. Oh, no, but we are comfortable in our role. HR, you need to become uncomfortable in being an HR practitioner. Because if you are uncomfortable, you're going to keep your eyes open, you're going to see what is going on in the world, and you are going to be ready to embrace the future fit strategy that is required for HR practitioners. You, HR practitioners, you are the future role for HR in the next decade. The question is, how are you going to get there? So with that, Dr. Grewe, the answer is fluid, the answer is continuously changing, and I hope our HR colleagues and practitioners are ready for that.
I think you're muted, Dr. Grewe.
Grewe.
Also being future fit.
It's the generative artificial intelligence.
If I may come in here, and I think, the pandemic was a large-scale experiment in terms of what Dr. Gie talked about, remote working, the digital workspace. But as she said, organizations are struggling with long-term organization design and development solution. And the themes that she talked about is the very reason we revise this test. So whatever she's talking about in terms of themes, the challenges, that's the reason we revise the stand, so we can talk about it later.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jivan. Um, Dr. Gie, what challenges do you foresee HR professionals will have in the coming decade?
Yes, we are human resources. I fully accept that. But with that human part, we also have to look at the globalized workforce. So, first and
Mm,
foremost, again, going with where we are now in 2024, the fact that you and I and Dr. Jivan are engaging on different platforms anywhere in the world, HR needs to focus that lens that your internal talent pool inside the organization is one source of where your talent is going to come from. But your external
mm,
talent is not just in your geographical area or within your province or within your country borders. We are looking at a globalized workforce. So HR needs to attract and retain these talented employees across the border. So do you remember a few years ago in the 1990s, there was this concept, the war for talent, and it originally
mm.
started with globalization, where it was, oh, but
Yes.
employees can go work anywhere in the world, they can transition, they can be mobile. Has anything changed? We are now propelled past COVID 19. We are now propelled into a globalized workforce where we actually don't know where your company is going to operate, how they're going to diversify, and where you as an employee are going to be required to go. So, for me, the
Mm,
biggest challenge is what is our talent management strategy? What is that going to look like? Because now it's not just attracting, the ones in the company, the ones surrounding your company, it is the globalized workforce. And also, we need to understand something with this hybrid work of world, with this remote working from your holiday destination, the trends of career pathing is also changing. So we have seen recently in a study done by Harvard Business Review that employees are now stepping out of their traditional career path. So they would want to have a break, a time out per se. And not a time out
mm,
not to work to go lie on the beach, but a time out to do other type of projects. So for example, if you are now been an HR practitioner, you've been a generalist for 5 or 10 years, and you want to now specialize into something, maybe compensation or training and development, or even talent management, you are going to ask either for a sabbatical in the organization. So, a sabbatical is where I'm going to come to you, Dr. Grewe, and I'm going to ask, may I
mm,
please have a 2 or 3 year sabbatical? I'm still going to work for you when I come back, but I want to have a 2 3 year break, and then I want to go work not for your competitor, but for another company in another particular role because I want to upskill myself. So, stepping out of this traditional career pathing role is not going to be bad for the organization. That's why I said we must change the lens in how we look at things. Your employee can come back in 2 or 3 years from now and say, look, I've gained all this new experience. I've traveled across the world. I can bring back all of these new competencies and new skills that I've acquired back into the organization, and we can change the way we are doing things. So we need to win with our talent management strategy and this
mhm,
raging war for talent. We need to focus on what is the career pathing going to look like and what it's not, because it's not about I'm stepping up the organizational ladder, I want to get a promotion. It's also about, the horizontal move, moving to a different department, moving to a different function within the HR department. So it's not just about upskilling, stepping out, it's also now about job rotation. So now you're saying to me, but we've heard all of these things. We've heard about talent management, we've heard about upskilling, and okay, now people are stepping out of their careers. But job rotation has been around for a very long time. So now I'm saying to you
mm,
again, changing the focus of how we view things. It's not HR as normal anymore. When we are focusing on what are the challenges within HR professional, it is about first embracing what are the challenges in the organization and what are the challenges with the employees working in the organization and understanding how those employees are changing. With this said, now let's go back to the digital work, the artificial intelligence, because now we have, so the humans are okay. You and I are human, Dr. Jivan is human, but this computer
mm,
is not. So we can ask each other questions, we can have a conversation, but how do you converse with this computer, this artificial algorithm that you've written? So the first thing for me, besides understanding the humans, is understanding what is the role of this generative artificial intelligence in the workplace. Now, I know, colleagues, that if you go onto the internet, it's very quick. Can you use the Microsoft Copilot? Can you use this chatbot? But we need to be careful and we need to have parameters. And HR must set up the parameters with the chief artificial intelligence officer of the organization to the extent of how can you use these chat GPTs and Gen AI in the workplace? Can you use it to write emails in the organization? Question. Can you use it to prepare PowerPoints for you? Question. Can you use it to prepare a document or a report that you have to submit to the board of direction? So, how are you going to manage and incorporate this digital worker with the artificial intelligence into what is going to be this new ecosystem of the world of work? And if you are going to decide on those parameters, how are you going to leverage then what and how you use artificial intelligence into your employee talent proposition, into your talent management strategy of why the employees who want to come and work for you? So for me, the challenges of HR professionals is understanding what the company needs. What talent does the company need? How are you going to attract and retain that talent? What is your employee value proposition? Why are the employees going to come and work for you and not work for the competitor? And if I, as
Yes.
your employee, want to step out and I want to have a career break or I want to focus on another project, are you going to allow me to take that sabbatical? Are you going to allow me to come back to your organization? And if I come to you as part of my performance discussion and say, look, I would like some job rotation, not that I'm tired of my job, that I want some variety, I want to do new things in age, are you going to be able to offer me and provide me job rotation as a solution to keep me in the company instead of me packing my bags and going to work for the competitor? And yes, understanding and having parameters of how this artificial intelligence is going to be utilized in the company. Because let's just be honest about something. And I hope our students are listening acutely to what I'm going to say now. If we are going to give everything over to artificial intelligence, why would I want to employ a human to do the work? Think about that. So artificial intelligence for the HR professional is not to replace HR, it's not to replace the human worker. It is about leveraging how the artificial intelligence is going to add to talent management strategy, to employee value proposition, to my career development. How and not how artificial intelligence is going to do my job for me, because then we're going to go to the whole point of mechanization, which we don't want to talk about, because that is about where the machine is going to replace the human, because the human then becomes obsolete. And I think that is our biggest fear now, 2024, moving into the next 10 years. Do I still have a job? And of course, what does that job look like? Does that make
Very
sense to you,
valuable.
Dr. Jivan? How do
Yeah.
you foresee this? With besides the artificial intelligence, I'm really focused on attracting and retaining the best talent, because this war for talent is going to rage on for a next couple of years.
Sorry,
I was
did you want
thinking,
me to come in on there? So I think
you
one of
can?
the things, if you look from the stance perspective, that uh, there are always going to be challenges, but it's how we systematically work through those challenges and then address those challenges. And that's why we would put forward the systems model in terms of how do you work through all of these questions that you're posing. Because it can be daunting. And I think a lot of HR professionals are grappling with all these paradoxes. But from our perspective, it's around how do you systematically work through it and then find solutions. As Dr. Gie said, these solutions, no one has the perfect answer, and you're not meant to have a perfect answer. It's constant iterations. And I think that's important. And it's lessons that we learned from the past, but also we need to relearn lessons in a new way. So it's learning from the past, but also it's relearning in a new context. And I think that's what we're trying to get through in terms of these standards as well.
But Dr. Gie, something very interesting that you said is it's not HR as normal. It's not HR as normal. That we've heard now. So, what skills would you say would HR professionals need to have going into the future?
So the skills for me is, it comes down to that fear of being obsolete, the fear of, am I going to have a job in the future, yes or no? So colleagues, students, that fear of being obsolete is not the fear of missing out, is the fear of what am I, who am I, and who am I going to be in the future? So the first and foremost driving force of this fear of being obsolete is this generative artificial intelligence. So the first thing I need to put your fears at ease is there is going to be jobs for humans coming into the future. Because, I'm in a first world country, it's very beautiful, and a lot of the companies, admittedly so, are closing down their actual face to face offices and they are doing everything online. So, as a quick example, I want to explain to you that when you are phoning into a company and you have a customer service complaint, you're not speaking to a human, you're speaking to the artificial intelligence. Now, we as South Africans have a particular accent. So when I came to Canada and I'm phoning into the customer service line, the artificial intelligence, the it is not understanding what I am saying because some of my pronunciations of the English words are different compared to how things are done in Canada, and most of the time it's an American company. So then I have an option where the bot is asking me, do you want to speak to a human? And then I have to calm myself down and say, yes, please, may I please speak to a human? So that must alleviate your fears, even because everyone's saying, oh, the call centers are the worst. There will always be a job for a human because the artificial intelligence can only do what it is programmed to do. With that said, HR practitioners, students, we need to reprogram ourselves. And that comes into lifelong learning. Yes, I know you are studying qualification and you probably have 1 or 2 or 3 degrees, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's not enough. Having a degree, having a certain amount of qualification and level that you have reached is just now the entry point into the marketplace. You are going to have to embrace the principle of lifelong learning. And that means after you've graduated, you need to have some kind of platform, some kind of engagement mechanism where you are going to link with other HR practitioners, where you're going to link with other industries or people in your fraternity at least, that you are going to remain relevant and up to date. It also means that you are going to have to continuously develop yourself through learning programs, through short courses, even through your own self-directed learning. Because the most important competencies and skills that you are going to need, besides from your qualification and your experience, is that critical thinking. With the critical thinking, how are you going to analyze whatever problem is happening in the organization? We've been speaking now about challenges facing HR. What is the role of HR? The question is, I don't know the answers. But now, how are we going to think about it? Can we think out of the box? Can you be creative in your solution? How are you going to tackle this problem solving activity? So it's critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving. And it's also about being resilient. Yes, we're all going to make mistakes and, things are not always going to go according to plan. But HR practitioners, if you want to be future fit and ready for this unknown role that you are going to play in the future, you need to be agile. You need to be ready to adapt, ready to change, ready to continuously upgrade and improve yourself so that you can work with the artificial intelligence to craft a new role and a new future for HR. And colleagues, students, this is one of the reasons why we want to bring all HR practitioners together. It's not just about the diversity and having all ideas and all genders and ethnicities and cultures represented. It is about ensuring that you have all the skills and the competencies ready for this globalized workforce. So that's one of the reasons why we advocate HR professionals to be registered with our HR professional body. And in South Africa, we refer to it as the South African Board of People Practices, or for short, SABPP. And when Dr. Grewe introduced me, she said to you that I'm an HR registered practitioner here in British Columbia. We call that the CPHR. So each of the countries have their own HR professional bodies. And even the professional bodies now are integrating and collaborating with one another because we see this need for HR professionals to be future fit, to be ready for whatever is happening, and to embrace the concept of lifelong learning, because that is the only way you're going to get over the fear of being obsolete. With that said, with networking with other HR professionals, the professional bodies also provide you with an avenue of CPD points. Now, for those of you who don't know, it is continuing professional development where you can engage in learning programs, conferences, even participate in an interview session like this, where you learn and listen from other HR practitioners. And colleagues, students, my last and final word on this, and I think for us, most importantly, and a competency that you can cultivate is ethical HR practices. And that is about doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, even if no one else is watching you. And that is something my lecturer told me. Okay, I'm a little bit older than some of you, but I've been working now for 20 odd years. So that's something that stuck with me for 20 years. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, even if no one else is watching you. That is how you ensure you have a moral and ethical compass that is going to take you into the future. Because it is very easy to cheat. It's very easy to use Chat GPT, unless Turnitin, of course, is going to get you. And it is very easy to put off other people's ideas as your own. But students, HR colleagues, be true to yourself, be true to your HR profession, and be the most authentic HR leader, HR professional that you can be. Because that is what's going to make you stand out in an HR world. That is what's going to get you your new promotion and your new job, being your authentic HR self. And that means being ethical and having proper moral guidelines and standards. And that, of course, is one of the standards that we have in our SABPP, which talks about HR ethics, governance, and professionalization. So, Dr. Jivan, I think I've given you a nice platform now to come in for our SABPP, because our HR fraternity needs to know what our professional body can offer them to be future fit.
I think you covered it quite nicely there. Just taking up what Dr. Gie said, being future fit. So the key question you're asking yourself is that what shape of HR professional should you be? And given the changes in the world of work, people even saying, should we even refer to specific disciplinary professionals? But it's another question for another day. So, there are these lists of ranked skills, and you mentioned some of these are cross-functional skills. And then you see these ideas around T-shaped and V-shaped professionals, deep expertise in the functional area and broad cross-functional capabilities. What we say for a professional body is that the competencies you develop needs to be aligned to the strategy of the organization. So when you look at a systems model and it's available on a website, you would see whatever you do through that system model, it then feeds into what you need to develop as an HR professional to deliver on its strategy. So what we're saying, the shape of the HR professional is aligned to the shape of the strategy. Now, one of the pillars Dr. Gie talked about is ethics, and that's part of the professionalization that SABPP is trying, has been undertaken since its journey from 1982. But one is the developing a body of knowledge. The second is ethical conduct, which Dr. Gie talked about. The third is self-regulation, because we are professionals. We are using our judgment, we're using our expertise, and that's why we are there. We're not robots, we're human beings exercising judgment, and we are accountable for the judgment, which brings me to the last pillar, which is duty to society. Now, the professional body is responsible, together with you, colleagues, to develop those pillars. And so, body of knowledge, what we've done is systemize a body of knowledge on practice, and that's what we talk about in terms of the standards, the people practices and governance standards. But it's a virtuous cycle. That means we bring the HR community together, and together we develop what are the good outcomes and the good ways of achieving those outcomes. And we periodically review it. As I said, we reviewed these standards last year because the context changes, the demand in HR changes. So it's a virtuous cycle. We need you to come through because we crowdsource and curate the standards. but it also contributes to your development because, as Dr. Gie said, it lays out the pathway for your continuous professional development, gives you a structure, a pathway in terms of understanding where you're going in the future. Because there are lots of advisories out there. How do you make sense of it? I mean, there's one picture I like is where you got so many pathways winding around. Usually, when we look at Dr. Gie mentioned traditional careers, it's one stepwise progression. But today, there's so many different pathways, and we get lost in them. It's not just one fork; it's many forks in the road. How do you make sense of it? And the trick of it is that there's no clear cut answer, and we don't try to provide you one set of answers. And the standards is not about one set of answers, but it's giving you the enabling framework to create the path for it and experiment. And I think when people think about standards in a professional body, they think about I need to fit into a box, and it's not like that. The standards are, you can think of it as scaffolding. It enables you to build out these, for example, the people strategy and aligned to your context, but also your capabilities aligned to your context. But you're not also tied to your organization. You yourself, your individual, you talked about changes in from traditional career, people talk about boundaryless and protean careers. You're moving forward and you're constructing your own pathways. And people talk about portfolio careers as well. So you're not just HR professional, you're multifaceted. So for us, it's all about bringing together the HR community, and together we can professionalize the people practices, and that's our mission statement. And we can only do that with you. And while we're doing that, you're laying out a pathway yourself for your development as well. And I thank Dr. Gie and Dr. Grewe for giving us opportunity. Join us in the professionalization mission. Join us in terms of your own mission and journey of developing yourself. I think the last point I'd like to make is that many of us feel paralyzed by the future because it seems so daunting. And I think the key thing, and Dr. Gie has been talking about, is having agency. And I think that's the key of this discussion, is that we need to have an agency and feel empowered, that we not only embrace the future, but we shape the future. And that's one of the key themes that we've addressed in the standards as well, is how do we embrace and shape the future as well. So really, it's about coming on board and even shaping us, shaping your profession as you want to.
Great. Thank you for that, Dr. Jivan. I just also want to say for those members who's wondering, how do I become an SABPP member? It's as easy to go to your website and there's a membership link. And then all of this valuable information is being shared. It's being shared by fact sheets, by newsletters. So thank you to the SABPP, what you are doing for the HR professionals within our country. And then before we move over to any questions and answers, thank you, Dr. Gie and Dr. Jivan, for making us think about the future and how to deal with this digital new employee that we have, AI, and how to embrace it. HR is not what we used to think it is. There's exciting times for us ahead. So I'm opening the floor. If there's any questions that you might have, you can either type it in our chat box or you can just unmute yourself.
While people are typing the question, one of the things you talk about is embracing. So I always say that from the Clint Eastwood movie, you got to embrace the good, bad, and ugly of technology. It's not cherry picking; it's understanding all of the facets of technology. So Dr. Gie talked about AI. It's understanding the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. And there's lots of challenges, but also lots of opportunities in terms of the use of AI. And it is scary because we don't understand, and the designers of this AI, they also can't explain exactly what's happening within those AI models. But I think there are ways we can utilize it in HR itself, and it's about experimenting, but experimenting with it in a systematic and ethical fashion. And I think Dr. Gie mentioned ethics, and that's a key for us as professionals. That's the pillar. One of the pillars is ethical conduct and self-regulation, and then duty to society. Whatever we do it in an ethical, manner, and then we
Yes.
consider governance and purpose.
Great. It seems like you have seen the answer, the question in the chat before answering, because you actually answered what somebody asked there. Do we have any other questions from the team, or even insights that you can share with us? I see we've got some lecturers also on this call, so you're welcome to share your insights as well.
Now, you see, this is what I refer to as that electronic void of silence. This is why I don't like online classes, because as soon as you ask for questions, there is absolute silence. So it's a pity now the artificial intelligence can't type out the question. So, and humans, this is part of our dilemma. You want the artificial intelligence, and here you have it, and you're not embracing it. Dr. Jivan says, be ethical. So, where are your questions?
It can be that, or it can be that the information that you shared was so valid. So we've got Marv Borges. While we are in the age of expanding, how do you feel AI and HR will impact the company culture? I think you slightly chatted about that, Dr. Gie. If you can expand a bit on that, that's a good question. Thank you, Marv.
That question is going to be interesting when it comes to what is organizational culture. And I'm not talking about the definition, I'm talking about what is it really now in 2024. And can I be honest with you, colleagues, HR professionals, we need to do, if you haven't done an organizational climate culture survey in the last 5 or 10 years, I would advise you to do one now. Because in order to answer what Mark's question is, it is, what is the culture going to look like going forward? My question is, what does the culture look like now? Because we have just, I want to say, recovered from COVID-19. We are trying to figure out, is it hybrid? Is it remote? Is it artificial intelligence? We don't even know what we are currently busy dealing with. With that, with this globalization, a lot of the companies are changing strategy. But every time, and what Dr. Jivan was saying about how you redesign the HR value chain, every time we design a new company strategy and new HR strategy is aligned to it, we need to ask ourselves, where is the organizational culture? And the culture is the way we do things around here. And right now, we are just recovering. So, what is the new way of doing things around here? With that, what is the climate? When you walk into a company, what is the vibe that you feel? Do you feel that diversity? Do you feel that you are included? Do you feel that you have a sense of belonging? Do you feel that if you show up in the company, you can actually make a contribution? Or are you just a number, an employee number where you are expected to be a robot, do your work, and clock out at the end of the day? So I think artificial intelligence, this whole thing of where the future is going to, is going to have a huge impact on our company culture and climate. But in order to understand where your company is going and how it's going to impact your company, you need to start off with that culture climate survey and try and bring it down from the top all the way down to the bottom. Culture and climate isn't something that happens at the bottom or in the middle of the organization, it happens at the top. So when you have your strategy sessions, when you have your performance measures, bring the organizational culture and climate into that. Because if top management can embrace whatever the vision and mission is for the future, they can drill it down into the strategy, into the culture and climate. Because it's not something you can write into a policy and procedure. It's something that must be espoused. It must be lived. You must see what is the culture. You must feel what is the climate. And that, unfortunately, is something, in my opinion, a lot of the companies and the HR practitioners are now neglecting because, oh, we can find a quick fix solution. The worst thing you can say to an employee is, I don't know if you're familiar with employee organization, employee culture fit. So the first question, especially in interviews, we ask scenario-based questions. Explain how you would behave, explain what you would do in this particular scenario. The question is, will you as an employee fit into this organizational culture and climate? So that question for me is not null and void. The question is, how does the employee and the organization find a fit coming together? And that is one thing I think we need to radically change It is about how do we, as employees with the artificial digital worker, how do we come together to create a new culture and climate that is future fit for the company? And that is why I'm saying you need to start with a culture climate survey to determine where you are now in order to figure out where you are going in the future. And if you link with our professional body, understand it, there are some practice guidelines that can assist you with that.
I'd just like to
Right.
tag on what Dr. Gie said. In terms of that experiment we had with remote working during the pandemic and the digital workplace, thereafter we had this whole dilemma around the return to office. But it seems that we get caught in this dichotomy. It's either remote work or return to office. And management say return to the office because of culture. But I think we are losing the opportunity to rethink how we look at space, time, and how people engage. There's many opportunities to reinvent and deliberately so in an explicit manner how we engage with each other, how we lead in the organization. So we talk about leadership and management all the time. We send people on these wonderful international executive development programs, but we're not dealing with the nuts and bolts that Dr. We talked about. And I think we're missing that opportunity of taking that opportunity to ask ourselves some serious questions around how we think about space, time, the way we engage with each other, the way we want to work, the way we want to manage, the way we want people to feel, like she said. I remember previously in one of the Harvard Business Reviews, they talked about the smell of the place. Now, with a hybrid working organization, that's difficult to think about. But you can be innovative in thinking about the smell of the place because, the other idea about return to office is the water cooler, uh, so-called water cooler conversations and innovation. But when we return to the office, each one's in a cubicle. There's a famous picture because remember the tech companies, ironically, um, Meta, Facebook, Google, all of them were calling their employees back. There's a famous picture of Meta employees going back to office and wearing those virtual goggles in their cubicle. And the question was,
Yeah.
you're bringing everyone back to office. Well, what's the point of it? So I think it's
Yeah.
radically rethinking the office and the office, the use of the office and the spaces in the office and how we spend time there.
No, great insight. Do we have any other questions? Okay. If not, then I want to thank Dr. Jivan. Thank you from SABPP side that you've represented the South African Board of People Practices. Dr. Gie, all the way from Canada, thank you. It was very insightful. And to the audience from Milpark's side, thank you so much for participating and listening to our speakers. You must have a beautiful evening.